we're then going to Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Fridge, and I'm here today to present on PCI DSS 4.0.1, Overcoming Payment Page Security Challenges. Specifically, we're going to be talking, of course, around those future dated requirements, which are now only 6 weeks out, which is which are requirements 6.4.3 and 11.6.1. The agenda is understanding those requirements, so going into a little bit of detail if you're not familiar with them or aware of what they are and what they mean and what you need to do, but also then going into a little bit of detail on the recent updates that we saw only a couple of weeks ago on SAC-A and what that means in terms of eligibility and what you may need to do as a result of the changes that have been introduced by the PCI Council. And then finally, we're going to talk about how Human can help you comply with these requirements and show you a high-level overview of our platform to demonstrate how we can help you streamline compliance with 6.4.3 and 11.6.1. So first off, let's talk about the requirements themselves. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with these, but just to recap, that the two key requirements which come into effect on April 1st are 6.4.3 around script management and 11.6.1 around change and tamper detection. So 6.4.3 requires you to maintain an inventory with written justification of all of the scripts that are present on your payment page, whether that's first-party scripts or third-party scripts or nth-party scripts. Any script that loads on the client side in the consumer's browser on the payment page, you have to have an inventory of those scripts with a written justification as to why those scripts should be on the payment page. You also have to confirm that those scripts are authorized. So you have to not only say, yes, we know what scripts are on the payment page and have a justification, but you have to have a mechanism to demonstrate that those scripts have been authorized to be on that payment page. And then you continuously have to ensure the script's integrity. So it's not okay to just say, okay, we've justified and authorized that script, but actually you have to go beyond that to continuously ensure that the integrity of that script in the event that that script was to change its behavior or change its makeup or something like that, which would then potentially invalidate the integrity of that script and potentially make it malicious or compromised. And then when it comes to 11.6.1, this refers to, as I say, change and tamper detection. And again, the ability to have a mechanism to alert unauthorized modifications to specifically security impacting HTTP headers and the script contents of payment pages, again, as received by the consumer browser. So if you're running and using security impacting headers, you have to be able to be alerted to the fact that if they change, and then be able to make sure that that change was valid and justified and not an attack or maybe an error. So that's those requirements at the highest level. I talked at the start about the fact that these requirements were introduced in version 4, which we saw introduced a couple of years ago and came into effect as of March 31st, 2024. These are future dated requirements, meaning that they don't come into effect until the 1st of April this year. And a lot of organizations were already trying to still at this point understand and comprehend how they were going to implement them in a fashion that didn't put too much of a burden on their organization. But then in the last couple of weeks, we've also seen some changes with only sort of 6 or 7 weeks to go to the requirements around the implementation of 6.4.3 and 11.6.1, which is causing a little bit of confusion. So hopefully we can help provide a little bit of clarity on what that means, specifically around the changes to SAC-A. So we're going to cover sort of the what, the who, the where, the when, the how, and hopefully give you a bit of an overview and a bit of clarity around if you are SAC-A or you typically are SAC-A, are you still eligible, and what you may need to do to be eligible moving forward as a result of the removal of 6.4.3 and 11.6.1. So just to talk through this snippet from the updated requirements, the council said that after consideration and review of industry stakeholder feedback, they're making the following updates to SAC-A. That includes the removal of 6.4.3 and 11.6.1 for payment page security, and requirement 12.3.1 for targeted risk analysis to support 11.6.1. And then the addition of eligibility criteria for merchants to confirm that their site is not susceptible to attacks from scripts that could affect the merchant's e-commerce systems. So why have they made this change? Sort of as alluded to in that first overview, it's in response to stakeholder feedback regarding the complexity of implementing new e-com security requirements 643 and 1161. So that would suggest that there's been a lot of feedback from maybe merchant banks and other members of the sort of the wider PCI community, suggesting that many of their clients and the organisations that they work with who are SAC A eligible maybe don't have the skill sets and the teams in-house and maybe even the budgets to be able to implement solutions to help them solve this problem. So how does this change impact you? So if you're non-SAQA, so if you are one of the various other levels of PCI and SAQA doesn't apply to you, then nothing changes. Those future data requirements still come into effect as of April 1st, and you still have to comply as you would have prior to the last 2 weeks when we've had these updates. If you are SAQA, you now need to reassess and determine, are you eligible? And the reason we say that is because the introduction of these new eligibility criteria asks you to confirm if your site is not susceptible to attacks from scripts that could affect the merchant's e-commerce systems. So do you have mechanisms in place to be able to provide that clarity and that confirmation that your site, not just the payment page, but the site itself, it is not susceptible to attacks from scripts that could affect all of your e-commerce systems. And this is where we've seen over the course of the last week or so some confusion because there hasn't been much guidance provided by the council as of yet, and we're hoping we see more in the coming weeks, given that the deadline is only 6 or 7 weeks away now, as to what's going to be acceptable when it comes to submitting your SAC-A report, or when it comes to interfacing with your QSA. What is going to become acceptable for you to be able to confirm that the site isn't susceptible to these types of attacks, given that with 643 and 1161 there are very clear criteria as to what you needed to demonstrate. That doesn't appear to be the case now. But in our sort of dialogues over the course of the last week or two with QSAs and other members of the community, there's sort of 2 or 3 thoughts around what could be deemed as acceptable. But really, the whole community is waiting on further guidance and feedback from the council as to what that may look like. If you were to ask 10 QSAs the same question around this now, you'd probably get 10 different answers. But just some food for thought in terms of what are your options for compliance. So you could look to move to SAC AEP. There's no guidance currently on whether this is the correct option or even the intention of these requirements being removed. But as you'll be well aware, I'm sure most will want to avoid that option because it introduces a whole host of additional requirements. Going sort of, I think, somewhere in the region of around 100 more requirements that you would need to implement come the point of your next audit, and come the point of these requirements being introduced. You could completely outsource to a certified PSP, so completely remove your interface and interaction with the payment gateway and the payment solution. Again, that is potentially some heavy lifting and re-architecting of your site and your payment interface in its entirety. You could also, if you are using a service provider, and when I talk about service providers in this guise, I don't mean a payment service provider, but maybe a service provider for your website, such as a Shopify or something like that. You could look to ask them to provide confirmation that the site that they're providing isn't susceptible to those attacks. But again, what that confirmation needs to look like, it is still, it's got a question mark over it. What we're seeing some organizations do, and even some QSAs recommend, is that you continue to implement 643 and 1161 as you were going to, but maybe even broaden that now beyond the payment page, given the guidance is asking you to confirm that you're not susceptible to attacks, JavaScript attacks, not only on the payment page, but actually across the site or the e-commerce site in its entirety. So actually, it could be that in removing these requirements, it's actually broadened the need to implement them. And then the other's got a question mark over it, because at the moment it's not quite clear what the other could be. I think we need more guidance and input from the council as to what is going to be accepted as confirmation of not being susceptible to these attacks, which will then determine what organizations can do. So we're now going to move on, and hopefully that provided a little bit of clarity around SAC A. I appreciate it's still somewhat up in the air, and we will continue to share updates with the community as we get them and further guidance. But either way, if you are one of the other sort of tiers or levels outside SAC A and you still need to implement 643 and 1161, we're going to now talk to you about how Human can help you do that. And it might be that actually you determine, even if you are SAC A, that the way that you prove that you are not susceptible is by carrying on as you are planning to anyway and implementing these controls. So if that is the case, I'm going to talk about how Human can help you do that. So here's an overview of the Human solution, but I think the best thing actually is to, with sort of 15 or so minutes remaining of this session, is to dive into our demo portal, where I'll be able to share with you an overview of our platform. So what I'm going to do is, because I've been burnt in the past and had to log in previously, I'll quickly refresh the page. There we go. So what we've got here is the Human PCI dashboard. So the Human PCI dashboard is a module within what we call our client-side defense solution. So just to give you a bit of background, client-side defense is the Human platform, which helps protect against a range of different client-side attacks. And it was built first and foremost sort of 4 or 5 years ago now as a client-side security solution. And then what we've done is we've built on an additional PCI capability so that you can manage the PCI 643 and 1161 requirements from within that same dashboard. So what you're looking at here is our PCI module, and this is a sort of a snapshot glance of your compliance posture against 1161 and 643. So what you'll see here is an overview of the unauthorized status, i.e. any scripts or headers that are currently not unauthorized and unreviewed that would need reviewing. You've also got a more detailed compliance overview of where your scripts and headers sit along that journey. Some are unreviewed, some are authorized, some are in progress, and again, the same for the headers. And then what you've got below, broken down across 643 and 1161, is imagine this as sort of your email inbox, and you're trying to get it to zero. These are your scripts and headers that you want to work through and go through that process with. And that can either be broken down by pages. So you can see here we've got a couple of different pages. We've got HTTP and an HTTPS page. That's the difference between these two as an example. Or actually, you could break this down by vendor. So the benefit of breaking this down by vendor is that, say, for example, you had lots of different payment pages, but you had common scripts across them. So you might be a large organization with a .com and a .de and a .co.uk as an example, but you have consistent scripts across them. You can just authorize and justify scripts based on that single script across all of those platforms. So what we'll show you now is just an example of the visibility that you'd get into, the level of detail you'd get into these scripts that would aid you in being able to justify and approve them, and then an example of what that workflow might look like. So here's an overview of the scripts that we've got running on this HTTP payment page. And I'm just going to choose this script, for example. So this is a third-party script. You can see here the vendor is Mixpanel, and that script was actually last seen today on Feb 11th. So I can very quickly and easily click into this script, and what pops up is what we sort of call the script ID card. So this is a sort of a snapshot overview of what the script is, what it does, when it was first seen, lastly seen. Because this script is actually a modified script, so this is a script we previously justified and authorized, but then it's changed its behavior, you'll see the previous script justification. So this is obviously a demo environment where we've got some dummy data. But what you're seeing here, what you'd see here is the reason why this script was previously justified, and then you'd be able to go in and look at what's changed and make a determination: do we want to justify this script again on the basis that its behavior has changed or something about that script has changed? If it's the first time you're seeing the scripts, this is also useful information here. You as the admin of this console may not know why all of these scripts exist or what they are. So you've got the service name, the service type. In this instance, this is an analytics script, so possibly owned by the web or digital marketing team. The vendor site, so that you can go and take a look at more detail around this script and what the vendor does, and then a description. And if you for example, if this was the first time you were approving this script and you said, yeah, okay, we should have that script. I've got approval from the analytics team that this is a valid script that lives on the payment page and we need it for XYZ reason. You can very quickly come in here, click authorize, add a justification, add any additional notes that you want, and authorize that script. What we've noticed and what we've developed, as part of our engagements with organizations over the last couple of years since we've been built this platform and talking to organizations, is that most organizations, the scripts are owned by various different departments, and certainly in sort of large global organizations, it's quite possible and more than likely actually that the person that's administering this system probably doesn't know why this script exists on the payment page, probably doesn't know the person or the team that owns that script. So it's going to be really hard for organizations to be able to say, okay, that's a mixed panel script, I'll go and email the team that owns that or the person that owns that. Because in a large organization, you might simply not know who that is. So what we've done is we've built a host of different integrations, an example of which is our integration with Jira, but you could pick another ticketing system or ticketing platform. And what we do is we allow you to integrate with those systems so that you can automatically push these justification authorization requests into those third-party systems and automatically assign them to the relevant team. So with our Jira integration, for example, what we do is we create a ticket every time we see a script hit the payment page or a script change its behavior, and then we look at attributes of that script to determine where that script is assigned. So, for example, we might look and say, okay, this is an analytics script. We know that that's owned by the digital analytics team or the marketing team or the web team. We're going to assign that Jira ticket to that team so that they can then authorize and justify that script. And the whole authorization and justification process can be carried out within the script. And just to give you an overview of what that authorization process looks like, or what you would see at least within our dashboard once the script has been justified and authorized, here's what that looks like. So we've gone into further a look at the authorization history of that script, because as you remember, I mentioned that this isn't a new script, but actually this is a modified script, as you can see here. And what we'll get is a full overview of all of the script changes throughout its life cycle on the website. So we first saw this script on December 15th, 2023. That script was approved and justified. And then actually on 4th of Feb 2025, so over a year later, all of a sudden we saw this script start to change its behavior. It's gone from a script that's an analytics script, providing analytics information, and then all of a sudden we've seen that actually a new security risk was identified. A third-party domain is loading resources from a CDN. It's interacting with a domain that was first registered recently and therefore might be involved with malicious activity. Quite often that's linked to these types of attacks where if someone modifies a script maliciously, adds a new domain that they want that script to send information to, and often that domain has only been set up in the last few days or weeks. We also see new behavior. So this script is actually injecting another script, which potentially could do lots of different things. And it's also accessing sensitive information around credit cards, information related to the fields around passwords, and even PII. So that alert would allow us to come in and determine as to whether or not we want to justify or approve that script. And as we go up, bear in mind this is a demo environment, so you're going to see lots of changes, but we can see examples of where this script has been authorized using that Jira integration. So a ticket was automatically created, the ticket that was under review, that got pushed into Jira, and you can see here my colleague Mo approved that via Jira without ever actually needing to come into the human dashboard here. And then again, you can see changes being made and modified to the script and further authorizations and justifications as a result of that script going back into unauthorized mode because it had been changed. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great, the script is needed on the payment page, but I, as a security professional, don't want to approve or justify scripts that are potentially going to compromise the integrity of the data, whether that's payment data or password data or wherever it might be, such as this script here being an analytics script. Probably no legitimate reason why this script should have access to credit card information or password information, but there is a legitimate reason and a business use for that script. So what we allow you to do is go one step further beyond what's being asked of you by the PCI Council with these requirements, and actually go into the script and investigate the script further, and at a granular level control what that script can and can't do. So if I go in and click to investigate the script, and I start sharing this screen now, what you'll see is that I've got a lot more detail around this script. So I can see the script URL, the fact that this is a third-party Mixpanel script, the exposure of the script. This is important because this shows how many of the users that are hitting the payment page in this instance are actually exposed to this script, i.e. is it loading all users? Is it only loading on 10%? So how many users are exposed to this script? And then all of those things that were highlighted when the script was modified, all of those behaviors are here, such as the fact that the script's accessing PII. We're seeing suspicious behavior through DOM mutation. We're seeing that the PII sniffing is occurring. All of these behaviors that we potentially don't want. And if we scroll down and look at the script connections map, you've got a nice visual overview of the script, where it's hosted, or what page it's on, what domain it's being pulled down from and communicating with, if it's setting any cookies, if it's sending any information to any particular domains. We can see here that it's communicating with low risk domains with a risk score of 5 out of 100 and 0, and then actually onward where that information again is being sent, and then arguably most importantly the fields that that script is accessing. So we can see here that there's a green line on the script for login email. That's because this analytics script has been approved by us to be able to access that information, and that's on the allow list. What we don't see is either a green or red line across all of these other pieces of information. And that's because we've not set a policy or at a script by script level determined what this script can access. So what I can do now is, whilst continuing to allow the script to exist on that payment page, and whilst having justified and authorized it, I can say, okay, with my security hat on, whilst I know why the business needs to use that script and it serves a legitimate purpose, I don't want it accessing login password, login form, login password, or expiration dates of credit cards. So I can very simply come in here and click and add that behavior to the deny list. I can put in a reason, credit card information not required by script, and then I can add that to the deny list. And what you'll see very shortly now is that that policy is being pushed down to the client side, and immediately access to the login data from that script is now blocked. So what that means is that the script is continuing to run, the script is continuing to do what it should be doing, but we're stopping it being able to see or read that login field. Now, if I jump back to the PCI portal, what I can also show you is that you're probably thinking, well, okay, that's great. We can be compliant and also stop the script from accessing sensitive information. But I've got 100, 200, 300 scripts running on my payment page. Do I really have to come in and look at every script to determine whether or not it should or shouldn't be accessing sensitive information? Luckily, the answer is no. So we've built a really powerful policy engine, which allows you to come in and create policy rules, both at a security level, these are what we call our client-side rules, and then a PCI level, and I'll go through what they both mean. So thinking about the use case that we were just showing, what we can do here is create rules such as block rules and allow rules around specific script behaviors. So I might want to say credit card access rule. So I may want to build a rule that says if the host domain of the script is not, for example, in this instance, it's humansecurity.com, but a better example would be if the host domain isn't WorldPay, or the host domain isn't Stripe or Adyen, and the script is not, let's say, Google, but again, that would be the script for Stripe or Adyen or WorldPay, then I don't want the script to be able to access credit card information. And these are all of the fields that are being pulled automatically from your pages. So here we go, we've got the credit card field. So what I'm saying here is, if the host domain is not payment service provider, and the script isn't the payment service provider, and the script's action is accessing credit card data, I want to block that automatically. And what that means is, instead of doing what you saw me do previously and going in and blocking at an individual sort of script level, actually we're now confident and we can apply that policy and save that policy. And then any script that tries to access credit card information that isn't the payment service provider, the behavior would immediately be blocked. You would then also set, more than likely, a secondary policy that is an allow policy for the payment service provider. So essentially you'd have your allow policies at the top. This script is allowed to do this thing, and then a blanket block for everything else at the bottom, so that if a script was to change in the middle of the night, for example, and try and access sensitive information, that doesn't just have to be credit card, it could be password, account creation information where PII exists. You have the ability to block that. So we'll get rid of that example. Again, you can also do this with justifications and authorizations. So you may be thinking again, well, we've got a fast-moving development team. They release iterative updates to the payment page or to the site in its entirety. Again, thinking about the site in its entirety potentially being now in scope for SAC A, we're releasing 10, 20, 30 different updates a day and A/B testing different pages and scenarios. I don't want to have to be coming in and getting alerted to the fact that a first-party script that's already gone through our rigorous security controls is changing, and I need to authorize it every single day. So what we can do here is allow you to create PCI authorization rules. So again, you'd set the rule name and a description, and then what you would say is, okay, if the host domain is human security, again, this would be your domain, and the script is first party, and again, we give you visibility of all your first party scripts. You can authorize this script with a justification authorization note. So then any changes to first party scripts would be auto authorized, and you wouldn't need to go through that process of manually doing that each time. You're, of course, whilst you're authorizing the script, that doesn't mean that you're authorizing potentially malicious behavior. So if someone was to compromise a first party script, you'd still have the client side policy rules set to say that that script couldn't do anything malicious, because you'd have built out your rule base to protect you against that scenario. And then finally, just before we wrap up on the sort of the overview demo here, all of the above really applies to the 11.6.1 requirement. So again, we've got all of the security headers, and we would use this to alert you to changes to those security headers. So here we've got an example of a new header, but that could be also a header alert, and you would work through the same process to say, okay, that was an authorized change and we approve it, or actually that alert that was a header security alert change, that wasn't authorized, and we want to go in and change that back to avoid the potential of compromise or a breach. So that's everything for our demo. So I'll just stop sharing my screen now. And just wanted to say thank you very much everyone for joining. I hope that was useful. I appreciate there is still some clarity around clarity required around SAC A, but as things change, we'll host more webinars and we'll share more content with the community to keep you up to date. But I thoroughly recommend speaking to your QSA and speaking to the wider community to make sure you get guidance on what to do if you are SAC A, and to make sure that you are eligible. If you have any other questions or would like to get in touch and discuss how Human can help you, feel free to connect on LinkedIn or reach out to me on my email address here. All the best for now. Thank you.